Okay, so let's start. so, guys, welcome to this. How should I call it? Epilogues wrap-up session. After last time, where you three, Emilia Amberwind, Tyrus Farron, and
Darko
Helvid II. I didn't want to mess it up, and I didn't.
I know you were struggling, so I was like, I'll just give it to him.
Managed to get into a certain auction and steal, in a somewhat uncoordinated way, a certain painting, valuable painting, belonging, allegedly, to Emilia's tribesmen, who live on the surface. Paintings which, it seems, has prophetic, divination-related properties. So, Emilia bamfed away with an arcane woo-ha
device
and arrived in a cave near River's End, while Darko and Cyrus had to contend with the hubris of the people who thought they could contain nature itself. And as the red mist crashed into the auction house on the surface of the planet, they made their way out, running, sprinting, using what resources they could, and made their way back to the underground. Emilia, in her wisdom, sent a sending to Cyrus, explained to him that she had, in fact, bamfed away with the prize. And so, after barely any time to think about it, Darko and Cyrus decided to buy/hire a couple of flying mounts and make their way to River's End, post haste. So, to wrap this up, let's start with everyone rolling a 1d20. PSA, this is not initiative.
Oh, off the table.
This will be your lifespan. Dun, dun, dun.
16. I'm living for the longest, guys. Sorry.
17. No, you're not.
God damn it.
None of you are 19.
Okay, so let's start with you.
But to be fair, I'm already dead, so.
So I am giving you the chance to talk to us in general about your hopes and dreams for, Darko, if you wish, but I assume more about Karen and what you would think they would get up to in the near future or long future, long term, whatever it is you wish to say about them, whatever you wish to explain they might try and accomplish, or things you're sure they do accomplish, as well as questions they have, things they want to discover. If I feel the need to, if you have questions for the DM, I'm talking about myself to the third person now. I am mad with power. So if you have questions about, to the DM, you can ask me, of course, and I will course correct you here and there if I feel the need, though I will try not to.
Okay.
So, go wild, and when you feel like I should, get the reins back, that's where we'll get back to.
Okay, well, for Darko, one of his main goals, outside of doing whatever he can to help Cyrus, as he was sent to assist in any way that he could, Cyrus's missions, he would also attempt to, whether however long or short or long it takes, to convince Cyrus to help him destroy the golems that killed both of our families and homes.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, that's pretty much what was his long-term goal. There was
Yeah.
to get rid of these golems. So
Yeah, and rebuild the city.
rebuild,
That's
do his best to rebuild his home. Yeah.
yeah.
However long that took, he was gonna do that, but he was gonna help Cyrus first and foremost.
All right. Now, what about Calvin?
Well,
What is his current plan? What are his current plans?
so
What does he hope to achieve?
Kelrin's current plans. Well, let's see. Let's see. He when he left, his first goal was just to go home. Go home and assess. See, what's happened. Talk to his sister first and foremost, because they never had a chance to have that conversation about what happened to their father. Who knows how well that's gonna go? And then try to find his mom and his other little brother. And then, as a family, decide what to do about their father. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So Calvin traveled on foot from Spires, braved the caves from there to the front line at the river. As he went through, realized that the front line was not at the river anymore, but had been pushed forward further into the conglomerate's territory. Towns were taken, villages were, some were razed, some were conquered. Most of the time, Calvin managed to slink by, as he usually did, and rarely did the new Eternian forces look too closely to someone like he who was not going against them, but
I mean,
the same way as they did.
he's pretty stealthy, and at any point, if he needed to go invisible to get out of the situation, I mean,
Yep.
could have easily been done. So.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I'm not giving you any shit right now. So Karen slinks through the front line of the war and makes his way back to Manside, his hometown, his city, and finds a city in flux, still away from the front lines, but with a crumbling leadership and streets and houses and dwellings that have changed, that have been destroyed and rebuilt in a very short span of time. Seems that the destruction of the circle had certain ramifications, and the existing order did not fare very well or very long after that. Others claimed a piece of the pie here and there. And all in all, when you really look through the cracks, if not for the war, it is pretty much same old, just a different veneer on top. So with that in mind, where does Karen want to go first?
I mean, he would immediately go home first.
Okay. You get home to a empty hall, empty of people, not of furniture. All of it is there and hasn't changed much. It's even been increased in size. Seems that walls have been broken and additional room has been made. You do hear the sound of voices upstairs, having a lively chat.
Okay, I'll go upstairs.
You find, like usual, your father's office closed in front of you. Seems that the voice do come from there.
Do I recognize any of the voices?
Give me a perception check, why don't you? Shouldn't be too hard.
Natural 20. For 26. Total.
It's muffled, passing through stone, but you recognize Courtney's voice, and the other you don't. It's you don't recognize it, but you can, just by the tone of it, must be a young adult or an old, rather an old teenager. That's another thing. 17-year-old or 18-year-old ish.
Okay.
Just by the tone of the voice, it's very almost gravely.
Does the conversation appear to be pleasant?
Seems like it.
Okay. I'll just knock on the door then.
Yes, come in.
I mean, it tells me to come in, I'm going to come in.
Yeah, I mean, then you come in. You open the door. You come in. You see curtains. First the room has been changed. The decoration everywhere. The cages on the ceiling have been moved away. The bookshelves have been emptied. There are still some of them left around, but they have added paintings of diverse themes. It's a bit less claustrophobic in here, a bit more open space. Courtney is staying on a chair on one side of this one big desk, your father's desk that hasn't moved, and she's speaking to your brother, who has grown a lot since last you saw him. And he doesn't look that much taller, but his voice certainly has changed. Seems to be in that phase when teenagers start getting this shift in their voices. He sees you and sort of seizes. You see, he sort of like is somewhat surprised, and Courtney grabs him by the arm. She says, "Well, we've been waiting for you. Where have you been?"
I mean, I've been with Cyrus.
Wow, that certainly answers the question.
Or, we discovered, believe it or not, potential destruction of the world or a way to fix it. I don't
Really?
know. There's a reason I'm not there anymore.
Really?
He seemed to think so. Look, I didn't fully intend to really leave like we did.
Oh,
There's a fight in the streets with an old friend of his, and then
okay. Okay. Why don't you explain then? What did you intend?
I intended to eventually have a conversation with you about what happened.
While you're having it.
As you know, father was very ill.
He was somewhat ill.
What we
He
were
could
able
have recovered.
I don't believe so. Based on what we discovered, he was becoming a danger. Or would have become a danger to all of us.
I don't believe it.
You can believe whatever you want. What I'm telling you is the truth.
No, it's something you believe, and you want to believe it so bad, you haven't bothered to check with the truth or anybody. She whispers something to your brother, and he sort of like takes a step back and against the desk, sort of like tries to move behind it. You also notice she has your father's medallion around the neck. So what do you intend to do now?
Well, first, where's mother?
I don't know.
Well,
She,
fully intend to find her.
when she doesn't want to be found, she is
If that's the case,
very,
that's the case.
she's very invested in the war effort. You know,
I'm sure she is.
she's gone around rallying troops and, well, I can't claim to know everything that goes on in her mind, but she doesn't mean to give up just yet. Unlike some others I know. So, is that all?
Are you also aware that father is hunting me?
Hunting. Hunting? Is that what you call it?
That's what it seems like.
So, you don't deny it then? Do you have perhaps an inkling of why you're being hunted?
I know well why I'm.
And why is that?
Because I killed him.
Well, that does. That's good. Ah, well, I'm glad you said that. That does ease a bit of the burden off my shoulders. I did wish you had checked in with me, though. Ah. I know you tried to do good. I know you did.
I did it to protect us, all of us.
Don't bring me into this. You did it on your own. I had nothing to do with any of it. None.
Well, that's fair. I'm just telling you the reasons why I did it.
Fair. Why do you utter words you have no... Do you have no shame? Of any kind?
No shame for killing our father and protecting our family? Absolutely not. I'd do it again in a heartbeat if it meant protecting all of us.
Well, I thought I'd be sorry, but really, Kelvin, I'm not. When I was told you were coming back, I thought you were gonna try to make amends of some kind. I really hoped so. This is disappointing.
Make amends. You want me to apologize for doing what I feel was right.
Karen, make a wisdom saving throw, please.
Natural 20.
All right. Coming from behind you, you hear footsteps. You turn and see the now familiar shape of your father. Odd as he is now. He looks at you like he has before, but his gaze doesn't grasp your consciousness or your physicality, and you retain, for now, yourself. You can hear your sister crying in anger behind you as your father charges you with no warning. But at least you see it coming, and at least there may be a chance yet for escape. And that's where Kelrin's epilogue will end. Now, what were the other roles?
It was me. I was above Amelia.
All right. So, second take. Do tell us about your hopes for Cyrus, as well as Cyrus's own hopes for himself.
Well, my hopes for Cyrus are growth in arcane skill, less of a worry about his friends. He wants to strike out for himself for the first time in pretty much his entire life. I think Cyrus would resolve the last few things with Amelia and with Darko as best he could, feeling at least some old urge. You know, Darko saved his life, so he would at least try to be understanding with Darko. More than before, anyway. And, pardon me, I think he would help Brom as best he could for some time, but not, I don't know that he would dedicate his life. It wouldn't be, spend the rest of my days following at my teacher's heels. I think finding some independence is the most important thing for him in the long run.
All right. A quest for independence, then, as opposed to clinging to old ties or leaving some kind of will behind yourself.
Yeah.
That's fair. Well, I have nothing to add to that, unless you have an event in specific you'd like to revisit. But that would be the end of Cyrus's epilogue.
Yeah. Pretty simple.
You would help Brom in his coterie for a while, get tangled in some ways, and probably get out where you still can when you recognize that things are not going well.
Yeah. And I think the other thing he would find fairly important, just to not pass it by, would be trying to help Amelia at least get back to her people, actually in person, and seeing how that turns out, just to make sure that everything's okay with her.
All right. So then, moving on to the last piece of the puzzle. Emilia.
Yes.
What are your hopes for her, and your Emilia's own hope for herself and what she aims to do?
My hope for Amelia is that the painting is returned and that she is reunited with her mother. However, I can understand if that might not be a possibility or it goes bad because, she lost basically the memory of who her mother is or what she looks like. What would Amelia want? Amelia would want to return the painting, but I think she wouldn't want to stay around considering she still has that ever longing wish to become, someone of fame or grandeur or grandstanding. So she would potentially she would probably just return the painting and try and find a way to achieve her dream of becoming famous. That she was pretty close to doing before, she decided to give up that dream in return for her mission.
I wouldn't suggest going back to spires where wanted criminals.
Well, are you wanted criminals in spires?
Well, I might not be, but I would think someone would finally utter the words, "Hey, that lady in the red dress that did the play, she's the one."
But who's gonna know that it was her if everybody that was on the surface died, except for the
If
two
everyone
of us?
did.
I mean, I killed quite a few with that thunderstep when they were around me, so. And potentially Bashy and the other guy too, because they were like right next to you, so they were.
It's
easily...
only the guards.
Yeah,
that pretty much saw the face. So.
That's a fair point.
Well, I mean, Bashy didn't even know anyone stole anything. I mean, he heard some shouts, but he was preoccupied. The reality is, very few people know there was any kind of theft at all. The people that were there when Amelia disappeared in a flash of arcane light, well, it's possible now they made it back. It's possible they did. And if they did, all that was lost in the auction, theft or no theft, it was lost regardless. It's possible that in the face of such a tragedy, there was no real accounting for who took what and when or why this was destroyed, or when or why or what. But with that said, if you want to go back to spies and you get thrown in jail, well, don't tell me it was safe to do so. Okay, so that's not what I'm saying here. But those were definitely interesting times, and the little painting heist, all in all, was not the big catastrophe there. So regardless, Emilia, you aim to go back to your tribe of Nendor as soon as possible with the painting. You are... Well, first you recover in River's End, as the teleporting itself has had some lasting effects on you. But you had a few days to recover, and eventually Cyrus and Darko made it back to you, and you embarked on this journey back to your people. Doing so, you headed to the surface in one of the several ways that exist. The one of most convenience to you was likely the one of the lifts near River's End, ensconced in a large monolith centered in its lake. You headed up, and from there, used the stars as a chart, used the seasons as a compass, not of what, but of when. And you decided to wait a few weeks, perhaps a month or two, so that your people would gather at Tusk Point, like they do twice a year. And so you came early. Others were already there, self in the case. During your travels, the painting and its host took a toll on all of you, and whichever entourage you decided to bring along. But most of you fared well, and the burden lied mostly on Amelia, who suffered bouts of hallucinations, of deep thirst, uncontrollable hunger, unstoppable hilarity. But you pressed on. At the conclave at Tusk Point, once your tribes gathered together, an old woman came to you, embracing you, asking you questions. You had certain reactions to that, which confused that woman, and in time you understood her to be your mother. to this day, and long after, you still, even when looking straight at her, cannot grasp the essence of what she looks like. The very nature of her being eludes you. Sometimes the fact that she even exists entirely drops from your memory, your mind, from your reasoning. She stops becoming a factor, a variable in the choices you made. And not by any choice of your own, simply as a byproduct of the power you wielded for that one moment. And it came as a warning to you that there are powers not to be meddled with. And so when you presented that painting to the other ravens, and they ensconced it with the rest of the design and attempted to make saints of the work of your ancestor, who apparently had predicted the moonfall itself through mysterious, marvelous, but also deeply tortured paintings. They did realize that something was wrong with the one piece you gave them, and they all went at great length, and a great expense of life was expended in several attempts to purge the painting of its host. They succeeded, but the cost was paid, and the tribe was never the same after that. Some would argue for the worse, others for the better. That's not for me to decide. Regardless, a new path was drawn. And though you were not the only one to bring pieces of the design for this conclave, this was a tremendous step and brought the tribe closer to rebuilding what was once lost. And if Emilia chose to, she could in fact embark on a journey to retrieve her people's legacy in the lost city of Nendoria. Or perhaps not. That would be her choice. To go back to the underground, seek a life of fame, or stay on the surface and seek a life of fame as well, of a different kind, more local, perhaps more warm in a way. Whichever is the case, Emilia, I'm sure, made sure to delight the company and protect the tribe. There's something you want to add?
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Cool.
Got a question though. Does Amelia
good?
accept Kelrin's invitation to come work at the Vi House?
No.
No?
Yikes.
Oh man.
Well, you ruined it.
DM, I do have one question.
Can't guarantee an answer, but I'll hear it.
Yeah. What are the odds that Cyrus could find some way to reverse Amelia's mother issues?
What are the odds? You want a real answer? Because I'll have to calculate it using advanced math.
No, I don't need like a calculus lesson. I
Yeah.
just mean if he spent a number of years, we'll say, there, growing in power and trying his best, could he find
High
some
odds.
way to try and reverse it?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay, so I have a question about Calvin's past.
I might have an answer.
What happened to your sister?
That's a question for the DM. She apparently tried to kill me along with my father, so
It's true.
When you say what happened to her, what do you mean?
Like, so after she disappeared, where did she go? Like,
oh, the night that
It was
yeah.
invisible. She had the humming stone from me. I
So
gave it to her.
what happened that night? And I may get some details wrong because this was a while ago, but the gist of what happened was Kelvin and Cantor, his father, they had an argument. Cantor at this point wanted to give his humming stone, which had magical properties, to Kelvin as a way for him to better protect his sister. They had an argument, I don't remember about what exactly, and the gift was not received. Following that, Cantor decided to give the pendant to Cyrus so that he could protect Karen instead, in sort of like a proxy thing. Like Cyrus protects Karen, who protects Courtney, it works out. And then after that, Cyrus decided, for reasons that are his own, to give the humming stone to Courtney. So she had it on the night that Karen murdered Cantor. And if you didn't know, one of the properties of the humming stone is to turn invisible. Not at will, but in a limited way. And so it's not the whole reason, but it's part of the reason you couldn't find her afterwards. She did. And at this point, she didn't even know that that Cantor had been killed. She learned about that way later. But she took refuge to an old man, a priest of the Horn of Madridor, one of the aspects of the Whisperer, the ones concerned with prophecy and the truth of things outside of the human scope, who was a sort of like an uncle, like an old friend of the family she hadn't seen in a long time. And she stayed there for a while and eventually came back to home, finding her brother gone, her father deceased, and she was hearing whispers that things may not be as they seem. After that, she had much work to be done. She had to keep the House going. The war broke out even further. The Circle broken made the city into a very loose political playground for many different groups. So she got busy. A while after that, Kanta came to her doorstep and they had discussions. At that point, she had heard rumors that Cantor may not have died of natural causes, but she didn't decide on anything and in any case wanted to wait and see and decide for herself. But after talking to her changed father, things, well, advanced rapidly. And then Calvin came back. Though they knew he would.
Well, and to be fair, I'm pretty sure I cast Scenting to Courtney at one point there at the end of the campaign.
You did. You literally told her I was on my way home.
Yep.
Yep. But she would have known regardless. So
Fair.
it's not on
I mean, it wouldn't have changed anything. I still would have walked in and still would have done everything, so. How'd my
I have
brother
two.
die?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how'd my brother
brother?
die? Yeah.
Well, we're not going to go too deep into it, but suffice to say, Cantor had a lot of groundwork done and in place, fail-safes to keep his family protected. And your brother went out sent to a different city for education for no reason. It was sort of a bargain piece. Basically, as long as Cantor did what he was supposed to at certain times, the safety of his two children were guaranteed. If certain things were not met, if certain conditions were not met, then that could not be assured any longer. His death precipitated that. And one of them survived because you did in fact send Jetto to retrieve them, and they saved one of them. The other died.
Cool.
Player times two.
What?
Huh?
I said Kinslayer times two.
Your
Yeah,
robot.
his brain exploded so much right there. His mind was blown so hard that.
I think I'm better now. Maybe.
I think
you're
you're
better
better
now.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you being the cause for death on two people now. That's rough. That's rough.
Well,
buddy.
I don't want to call it the cause. This is not as simple as that. But the death of Cantor, as I said, precipitated a bunch of events. Some that touched you, many that didn't. For the better or worse.
So had I not gone with Cyrus and stayed to run things, could I have prevented my brother's death?
If you had said in Manset specifically, doubtful, because that all happened in Kalasmura, the next town over, the next largest city over. You'd have to go there and actually, participate in what was going on. But like the thing is, I cannot tell you that because now we're going into a multiverse type thing, like alternate dimension fucking thing. Because I don't know what you would have done if you had stayed in Mansaid, and I don't know how involved you would have gotten with that part of the plot. What I can tell you about the White House generally is that your mother was always the head of operations. She always had been from the get-go. And Kenta was very much the front for most things related to the hum. Because for all intents and purposes, your mother was the hum. And essentially was what it ended up being at first was an information gathering operation for Imdalorian spies and spies in Mansaid who reported directly to the leadership in place, and basically using their crime front as a front to gather that information. So, yeah, was I answering your question and lose myself?
Kinda.
Probably.
Yeah. You're alright though. Still answered my question.
Well, which
Sort of.
was?
I mean, could I have prevented my brother's death? But you said it doesn't matter. I would have had to do certain things and not to worry about it. But then you went into.
Well, yeah, it basically entirely depends.
Right.
You could have been. Yeah, I mean, I would estimate that as very low chances, but like thing is, at the start of the game, if you had asked me the percentage chance that Kelvin would kill his father, I would have said 0. So what the fuck do I know?
I mean, you gave him a disease that he was turning into something that could have potentially killed everybody. So
Well, that's a conclusion you came on your own.
based on the evidence that we found,
Nah,
Sure.
it's all on Cyrus. That's what it is. I should have
Well,
never told you anything.
You know, based on the conclusions, on the evidence that you found, and the conclusions you drew from these pieces of evidence. I'm not saying it was a wrong, or you know, a
Right.
good or wrong choice. That's
But-
not really the point.
right? But knowing the fact that through his entire life, Kelvin was always ingrained to protect his sister and his family from anything and
Mhm.
everything, he included that to be potentially his own family.
Yeah, that's fair. But I
So-
didn't see that coming. You know. So I'm using that as a basis to tell you I don't know if you could have saved your brother.
No, that's
I
fair.
just don't know.
Well, I've got a last 2 questions that aren't quite so bad, I don't think.
Okay. Well, you didn't want to know why Courtney was so important, right?
I did,
You didn't
yeah.
want to know that. And I can tell you that if you want. It's not super relevant necessarily, but I can tell you exactly why.
Okay.
So when she was born with horns, which meant that according to the Whisper religion, she must be relinquished to the listeners because she is imbued with prophetic potential. Your parents didn't like that very much, and they worked with what they had and the connections they had, and effectively sawed these horns off. And worked a lot of cosmetic changes so that could not be really, retraced. And they had a lot of problems dealing with that and how to, keep it under wraps. But ever since she was young, she would have inklings or insight about certain things, and she hasn't been wrong yet, at least to her parents' knowledge. And that was something that was cultivated. Your father was aware that it wasn't fair, but he also was aware that life isn't fair. And he didn't feel like you needed to know that. He didn't feel like you needed to know that to as a reason to protect your sister. So he never told you. He also never told you because it's something he and his wife promised to never talk about out loud, ever. So he never did. And your sister, until very recently, didn't really know either where that was coming from. She had inklings, and she knew not to talk about it to anybody except her parents. But she learned the truth recently. So there you have it.
Cool.
So Cyrus, you had the... I still calling you Cyrus.
Yeah,
Have it.
I'm Cyrus.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
Some of this.
I want to know what happened with Hiram, if he ever made it out of the prison, and if he stayed crazy forever. Since we saw, in his mind, we saw that there was a portion of him anyway that was still usable, normal, to some degree.
Perrin, the Brahms coterie got him out. They got him out and didn't treat him very well. they didn't treat him horribly, but they did treat him as an asset to be used. You could say for the greater good, though Brom would not like this phrasing. For the most part, what life he had to live after that was mostly paved with frustration of trying to resolve an enigma that he was not equipped, or maybe not even supposed to figure out ever. And that want never really ceased.
Makes sense.
But I can say with full conviction that he lived the rest of his life comfortably. He had no physical want or need that wasn't met within a few hours. But he was, in fact, still a prisoner in his own mind.
Okay. Last one. And this one's much, much lighter, I'm sure. I hope. God, I hope. The Jamunti family, the ones that we got that had the encounter with the painting and the spooky ghost thing, did they do well going forward?
Long after you left Spires, and a lot of things changed, but
Did they invest that platinum well that I gave them?
power changed hands quite often. Spires became independent and became a hot trade, like a hot center of trade. Soon after the war, with the conglomerate ended. In a catastrophic failure, or perhaps an act of terrorism, who knows? Several of the spires collapsed. The Dramonti family at this point was well equipped to meet the increasing need for food of people who had lost their homes and their everythings. Thanks to that, they managed to rebuild much of what was lost, and because of the quickly shifting political landscape, their previous misdeeds or missteps were forgotten, and they forged a, if not rich or widely successful, an honest, carefully plotted life, and the house flourished.
Awesome. See, we had one good ending somewhere in there.
Yeah, I do good. I kill my family and save another. It's fine. It all balances out.
Didn't I technically save them?
I gave them the money. They wouldn't have had the money to rebuild.
I don't think they were gonna rebuild.
But at what cost? Oof. I think that's it. I mean, I have other questions, but I feel like we've wrapped up enough. It's good. So good.
Yeah, I got nothing else, man. I mean,
you know, that felt like at the end of an RPG where they go like, you know, this is the things that you fixed or broke over the course of your story.
Right.
That was sort of the intent. So, yeah. Well, if you played Fallout.
Yeah, Fallout or like Dragon Age, where they're just like, yeah, and this person goes on to do this, and yeah, it was cool.
The only thing is Vera keeps coming back.